Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas looking to nourish their dogs and themselves, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller, holistic canine nutrition and well being consultant, here to walk beside you on your Mystic Dog Mama journey. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. And if you've been around here for a while, welcome back. I'm thrilled that you're all joining me today. Walking our dogs has become one of those unquestioned quote-unquote shoulds of dog guardianship. But what if it's not always the most supportive choice for our dogs? In this conversation with dog trainer and behavior consultant Niki French, we gently challenge the idea that going for a walk is always the best thing for our dogs, and explore what it really means to meet the needs of the dog in front of us. We discuss ACE free work, a powerful observational and enrichment-based approach developed by the late Sarah Fisher, designed to support nervous system regulation, encourage our dog's agency and choice, offer low-pressure enrichment, and help guardians see their dogs more clearly. We also explore why some dogs struggle with walks and how that can be misunderstood, the role of environment, pressure, and expectation, how ACE-free work can support dogs post-surgery or during recovery, the intention behind National Don't Walk Your Dog Day, which is actually coming up on April 2nd, and why doing less can sometimes create more transformation. This episode is an invitation to soften, to observe, and to question the narratives that we've been handed about what dogs should need. Because sometimes the most supportive thing we can actually do is to pause. Now, before we dive in, a quick favor to ask you. If this episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also enjoy it. And I'd always love to hear what stood out to you. Leave a comment and let me know your favorite moment or takeaway. Your feedback really helps shape future episodes. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Okay, on that note, let's go. Good morning, Niki. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mystic Dog Mama podcast for your interview number 2. I'm so excited to have you back.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for this. I had to go back and listen to the other episode because once I've been on a podcast, I don't listen to it back. And I should do actually because it was a wonderful conversation. I really, really loved it. So yeah, super excited to be back.
Oh, I'm thrilled that you agreed to do it. I loved our first conversation. And for listeners who haven't listened to it, I will link to it in the show notes. But I had first asked you the first time around to come on to talk specifically about your work around Don't Walk Your Dog and the campaign around that too, which we will absolutely talk about. But I wanted to have you on this time to also discuss your work with ACE free work and how that relates to your whole notion about rethinking the way that we're engaging with our dogs and giving our dogs different opportunities for agency and experience, and how that can support us as the guardians in helping some of our more challenging dogs, as well as also making sure that we are giving our dogs a full life experience and that having a dog doesn't have to look a particular way. So I'm so excited for just the richness that this conversation is going to have today.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah. And a lot's happened in those 2 years for me. So yeah, really good to get back into it. And yeah, we know that ACE is going to be a big part of the conversation today. So yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So maybe it would be helpful just to give a brief recap. Like I said, I'll link the original episode in the show notes. But if you could kind of talk about your interesting journey into the world of dogs, and then specifically how you got into the notion of don't walk your dog, because I think that can challenge a lot of people around, what do you mean don't walk my dog, and why would I not want to walk them? So let's maybe start there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do long story short. So I was dog mad, animal mad my whole life, but went into a career, didn't really think about, once I'd got rid of the notions as a kid of like, oh, I want to be a vet. Oh no, you have to put them to sleep. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's that 5-year-old conversation that I'm sure quite a few people have had. And so just got into, life and a normal career. Ended up working in property sales and marketing, and fast forward 30 years, I had a bike accident. I had a little bit of a brain injury and some other sort of physical issues, but it started a bit of an emotional unraveling. Whereas I used to sort of thrive on busyness and pressure and all that kind of stuff, it didn't it didn't do me well at that stage in my life in my mid 40s. And it was a chance conversation with a friend of a friend who was going to she was looking at getting a dog. She was looking at quitting her job, and she said she was going to retrain. She was thinking she was going to retrain as a dog trainer, and it was an absolute sliding door moment for me. I'd been soul searching for 3 years of just thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I was barely coping. And there it was, like just a gift. And it was literally 48 hours later, I handed my notice in, and I just knew. And that was, 7.25 years ago now. And I've never looked back. It's just the most joyous decision I've ever made. I have never been happier. It's been the happiest 7 years of my life. Still lots of stress, different stress to my old life. But just a joy to be doing something that it feels like it's truly what I was meant to do, albeit the first 30 years were not wasted. Like it was all part of that picture. But yeah, I feel very, very fortunate to have found something that truly lights me up every day. So I started, I was training to be a dog trainer. I was doing some dog walking just to get my hands on lots of different dogs and, to just build my experience because of my working hours previously, I didn't even have a dog as an adult. So as soon as I quit and started up my own business, obviously I got a dog. I'm sure we'll talk about Bodhi at some point. And I was I was really drawn to rescue dogs and the dogs that struggled. This wasn't about dog walking to make money. This was about dog walking to really work with lots of different types of dogs. So I was taking on the dogs that most people wouldn't. And very early on, I had a couple of clients whose dogs were quite dog reactive. And we live in Twickenham. It's quite busy. It's quite hard to avoid dogs if you have a dog reactive dog in a space like Twickenham. And very early on, I said to one of my clients, I know you've hired me to be a dog walker, but how about I come round and we do some games, training games at home instead of a dog walk? And the first lady was wonderful. She went, yeah, sounds great. Do what you want. And that was Finn, a beautiful rescue lurcher cross. So yeah, he was totally my muse from day one. And it started a real passion in me for helping these dogs that were not what people see as a normal dog. What is a normal dog? There's no such thing, but you know what I mean, an easy dog. So I very much went down that path from a training and behavior point of view of really wanting to be able to help them. So it was sort of a natural no, not transgression, that's not the right word at all. There's my brain word muddling thing that development, let's just go with a different word, development, to then get into lockdown caused me to take my business online, like so many of us. And I had another couple of clients that I was working with remotely, and they had dogs that were having a nightmare on walks. Just every walk was shocking. One of the dogs was extremely noise sensitive. They lived in quite a rural area, but it could just be a random bird scarer or a flatbed truck or lorry going down a lane, a long distance away, and that would be enough for this dog just to be pancaked and frozen. Dog reactivity, stranger reactivity, if that's, it's not a word I like particularly, but I think it's one that a lot of us sort of kind of understand what we mean. They struggle with those things. And it was the second time on a Zoom call, and I said, you need to stop walking your dog because the dog was, you know, it was a nightmare for the human, and also terribly hard for the dog. Their nervous system was constantly on alert. So yeah, it was the second time I said that phrase, and then I realized that was the book that I knew I'd wanted to write. I wanted to write a dog training book, but didn't know exactly what. There's quite a few dog training books out there. But it was the angle that felt right for me. So I wrote the book relatively quickly. It was a lot of what I was teaching people one to one that just, kind of became the book of the how-to practical guide if your dog is struggling on walks, the things that you can do instead. And I realized how important, when the book was published, how important it was to try and normalize this, that walks are not the be all and end all of a happy life for a dog. And actually, for some dogs, it's the exact opposite. So that was how the book Stop Walking Your Dog was born. And from that and the reaction, I realized this was a much bigger conversation that we needed to try and get people to have. So I decided to create an awareness day that got people talking about it. And that was how Don't Walk Your Dog Day was born. Was it 2022? I forget my dates now. Probably, yeah, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that we started the awareness day, just to kind of shake things up and get people to stop thinking, I've walked my dog 2 to 3 times a day, all its needs are met, that's it. Because there's so much more to what our dogs need and what they enjoy. Um, yeah, so it's about getting people talking about it at least one day of the year, to aid those conversations for people that have, the kind of dogs that a lot of my clients have that struggle. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And just as a reminder, it's April 2nd, correct?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so coming up real soon. So it's purposely in April. It's not on April 1st as April Fool's Day. That felt a step too far, but I wanted to do it as soon as possible in April as possible. It's Pet Anxiety Month, so yeah. Oh, sorry, it's Anxiety Month. So that was really pertinent. Yeah.
No, I love it. And to kind of attest to that too, I mean, I've spoken to you before and I've spoken quite a bit on the podcast around my issues with Lucky around reactivity and anxiety and really struggling. The walks were often a challenge for me. And I found that playing games with him or doing different types of activity actually created the kind of experience that I wanted to have with him that I thought I was going to get on the walks, right? But in reality, he struggled with a lot of that. And when I came across your work, it made sense to me as to why it was so important. I was sort of seeing it. It was almost like the flip, right? Where I was doing that and then came across your work and like, this makes sense about how we can provide other opportunities to meet our dog's needs in a variety of ways. But I have to admit, like, I did sort of feel a bit of guilt and shame, for example, if I wasn't going to take him for a walk and if I wasn't doing that normal thing. And I think that's something that a lot of pet parents are really combating to your point of like this cultural norm that we have of 2 3 walks a day and then you're doing well. And I think that's a part that needs to be addressed too when we're sort of talking about the topic of how we meet our dog's needs and normalize other ways of doing that. But it requires being willing to step into that place of discomfort for ourselves as well. Would you agree that that's a part of it for your clients too?
Yeah, yeah, massive. And I think there's a number of layers to that, because there's that internal battle that we have of what we should be doing with our dogs. And then I think a lot of the people that I talk to, their gut is telling them that what they're doing's not working. It's not right. It's not right or wrong, but it's not working for them and not working for their dog. So they have this gut feeling of like that something's not right, but they don't know what to change. And then if they've gone down the route of going, okay, well, let's not do that, let's do other things instead. I think there's also there's their internal battle, and then there's the pressure from around them, often partners, family, friends. What do you mean you don't want to walk your dog? So just trying to help people normalize that. And I think having a book written about it specifically, obviously, I mean, I say it's not a concept I've invented for one moment. There's lots of trainers and behaviorists that will give this kind of information out, but it's trying to normalize it so that people can make themselves feel more settled, that yes, oh, my gut is right, I'm right to trust my gut, but also to then, flash the title at, a well-meaning family member or spouse to say, no, 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 it's not me, look, this is the thing. Just to, yeah, to normalize it more, definitely. But yeah,
Oh, I
huge
agree.
guilt, I think, for people.
Massively, massively. But it also it's bringing up a lot of questions that I was just mentioning to you before we started recording that I'm seeing kind of bounced around in the dog space generally now, which is about understanding ideas of welfare and what that means and whose perspective are we taking upon with that. And I think I had a really interesting conversation with Vanessa, who has Spicy Dogs Behavior out in Sri Lanka, where she was talking about the perspective of village dogs, community dogs, etc., and how we understand welfare from their perspective. Because often she was talking about, like, as Western tourists, we go to places like that in the world and we see dogs living in a completely different way, and we think this is awful. All we see is suffering. But when we start to understand welfare from a different perspective and look at the fact that they're not pets, those dogs, how can we actually learn from that context and then bring that into our pet world where we're holding them captive, right? They
Mm.
don't have the agency, which is a huge thing that you and I talk a lot about. Like, so how can we facilitate more agency, and how in these broader discussions of what does it mean to support our dog's welfare, how does that critically, not in a negative way, but in terms of like applying a different lens to how we are engaging with our dogs and what we think the right things are to meet their needs. What are their needs actually? Have we maybe overlooked certain needs, for example? I think this idea of not walking your dog is a gateway to starting to look at the broader kind of assumptions that we've made about welfare for our dogs, unpicking them and looking at, could we perhaps do it a little bit differently? I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, yeah. So as you were talking there, my head is just, just shouting it's agency, 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 because actually the streeties do have a huge amount of agency in their life compared to our captive dogs over here. And they are captives. And I think if we start, I mean, you've obviously got the fundamental welfare needs of, shelter, water, food, um, that core piece of safety and survival. But then the next layer is this, like, it's interesting to think about, why is agency so important? Because this lack of control can really contribute to persistent stress. Even if we are making wonderful choices for our dog, like we're buying wonderful food, whatever food we choose to give them, you know, taking them out to great places that they enjoy, that they are still lacking choice pretty much their whole lives. Where you're going to go and walk, what are they going to eat, how are they going to eat it, what are they going to drink out of, when are they going to be able to go into the garden, and when do they need to come inside, when are you going to go for a walk. You know there's so many small things that we can introduce to give dogs an element of choice in their lives, and the impact can be so powerful on their welfare. And as I say, we might not think about a choice of flavors of food as being a welfare issue, but when we look at it as a bigger umbrella of having this gift of agency that we can give to our dogs, that it doesn't need to be difficult, doesn't need to be complicated. And that's why, ACE free work has become a really significant part of what I focus on now, because I just think that's just such a big piece of this welfare picture, aside from the basic fundamental needs.
No, I love that. Well, maybe now's a good time to introduce what ACE free work actually is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think ACE itself, so ACE stands for Animal Centered Education. So ACE free work is a low impact, enrichment based activity. So it looks like enrichment, and it is very enriching, but it is way more than that. So I think sometimes people will have a couple of snuffle mats and they'll give their dogs some dinner on a lick mat. and that's wonderful, that's enriching, but that's not necessarily ACE free work. So it is an activity that is specifically designed with a dog in mind, and it can really support their emotional, their physical, and their cognitive well-being. Like it's huge. It's been developed by Sarah Fisher, who sadly passed away only a couple of months back. Over the last 30 years, through her work, a lot of it through rescue centres like Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, she's been working with thousands and thousands of dogs. And it's what she has learned from them. We always talk about our canine tutors, like they are how we learn about this. This is how this has been born, how this is created, and how this has developed so much over the last 3 decades. Um, so ACE free work, it involves setting up sensory stations, using different textures, different smells, different heights of things, and we're creating the ability for choice, but we're also creating movement opportunities. So it might be small movement opportunities, like it might be a snuffle mat that it's a really lovely height for the dog, depending on the length of their legs and their shape. And it might just be really subtle movements of, the neck and the head and the tongue and the ears and all of that. So it might seem very simple, but there's obviously a lot going on. Or it might be movement opportunities between stations, and that stations are further apart. So the dog can actually get up some paces, not running around, but they can move between. So we talk about movement opportunities. We set up these stations, and the the dogs can explore freely or not. There's no pressure, there's no cues, there's no training, there's no come here, do this thing with me. It's there for them to experience. So there's no pressures because they are moving in a way that feels best to them. It can help to release tension. It can help them to feel more grounded. It can help to build up skills, if you like confidence, whether it's around novelty or it might be trust around their caregiver. So it's incredibly powerful for dogs that are nervous or reactive, or recovering in some kind of way. Um, at a very simple level, like what their bodies are doing, how they're moving, how they're standing, what they're doing, it directly contributes to how they feel and therefore how they behave. So if we can create these stations that help them to move their body in a way that is the most dog that they can be, in the most wonderful way that they can be, it helps them in that moment, but it also helps them after the event. Like there's a longer term impact, like a positive impact. So it activates important neurotransmitters that are associated with feelings of well-being. And one of the favorite quotes I have from Sarah is, it's a daily dose of happiness for your dog, and to be able to give them that in such a gentle and pure way is just magical, I think. So yeah, so the animal-centered education, it is education for the dog, because we can teach them things. We can teach them sort of training basics like loose lead walking, and being comfortable with handling and things like that. But it's also really education from our point of view, because we can get to observe them, and probably talking about observations and things like that is another thing to talk about. But yeah, that's how I would describe ACE as succinctly as I can.
I love that. And is is the free work actually conducted within sort of a closed environment, or is this something that you can apply like on your walks, for example?
Yeah, so both, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like we talk about no attachment to outcome. So NATO is the acronym we use. There's no attachment to the end outcome. If you set it all out and you spent 10 minutes setting it all out and your dog walks away, that's fine. We can't get all kind of like, oh no, we were going to do some training with this. Like that's the dog's choice. That's the whole point. I've never really had that happen, to be honest. So you do have goals in mind. You understand your dog, or the trainer and the practitioner is understanding that the dog they're working with. So we set things up in mind. Um, but then beyond that, there's so many ways that you can use it. So I would do it inside. I would do it in my garden. So enclosed spaces. In an ideal world, the dogs would be naked. So no collar, no harness, no lead. There are obviously times when we need to have equipment on them, but from an observation point of view, if we really want to see how their body is moving, we'd like to see them as freely moving as we can. But it can also be used beautifully on a walk. And a couple of months ago, I was working with a client who's got a terrier who just loves to terrier. Like, she's not much of that picture. There's just squirrels over there and there's terriering happening. And so it's about connection. So that was our kind of goal of like, can we bring a little bit more connection without having to stop the dog doing what it wants to do, but giving it really lovely reasons to come back in and engage with his caregiver. So that, a couple of snuffle mats in the rucksack, some food, we just set them out. It's not all about food. We can talk about sort of what to add to stations. It's about encouraging exploration. So it might be different foods and different things to drink, to lick, to chew, and so on. But it can also be interesting smells. So if I'm doing ace-free work in the garden, I might have collected up some feathers or some bark or, some things from the outside that I bring in. It might be some unbleached sheep's wool from my dog's raw food packaging. It could be a dog towel. Maybe I've taken one of Bodhi's dog towels to a client to put into ace-free work because it smells of a different dog. But of course, in the environment, the beauty is you have loads of interesting smells, just their natural. Like, dogs are kind of doing their own ace-free work. Like, they don't need us to set up the various plants that smell amazing and where the critters have been and where the other dogs have peed and all that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of natural things that you can tap into. And it's just about the dogs exploring. So yeah, you can absolutely do it out and about as well. Yeah.
I love that. So what would it look like in practice if somebody were to see a free work session? And you use the term observation and the importance of observing the dog. What are we actually looking for?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with how it would look. So it might be I've put together a little free guide, which is how to get started with ace free work without buying a thing. So that's, I know we'll put the link in because that's a really good way of just going, what does it look like? Because I think that's the interesting thing. It might look like if I was setting up a simple ace free work session for my dog. He's got quite long legs. It might be a raised up snuffle mat at a nice height so that he can access the top of the snuffle mat with a nice neutral, relaxed top line. He can pick up food off the floor, but he kind of looks a bit like a giraffe when he's doing it. So for him, that's not the most, he can do it, it's fine. But if we're looking for relaxation in his body, we think about like, what kind of height would be a good sort of snuffling height for him. There would always be a source of water, so a water bowl. Again, you might want to think about the height of that if you have a taller legged dog. Um, it might be that there is a station where it's a bit of a lick mat, something fairly untextured. I find overly textured lick mats often dogs don't like, and they like to lick, and licking can be very calming. But often a smooth surface gets a more relaxed licking than an overly textured bobbly one, which a lot of lick mats are. So there might be something to snuffle, something to lick, something to drink, and maybe something else that just smells interesting. So these might be at, say you've got three, like, think of the triangle points on a triangle with space between each of the stations that it is at least a dog's length, so from tail to nose, so that they can move from one to the other without the other station kind of affecting how they move their body. So they can truly just make a decision, I want to go from here to here, and there's nothing in my way. So it might just look like that. That could just be how you start. And from that very simple start, we can start to make observations. And I would say for observations, unless you have the eyes of incredible people like Sarah Fisher had, who just has this ability, all seeing, of any dog she ever sees. She used to be able to go, that left toes, that's a bit interesting, what's going on there? And I'd be like, I can't see anything. Like, my powers of observation are, not the best. So I always video. at dog height, kind of at like nice and low down, not coming top down. Just set the video up, hit record. So you've got all the stations in there, and then you can watch the dog and maybe be in the ace free work session or just there, just sat there watching them. But also you can watch stuff back. And it's when you watch stuff back that you can start looking for patterns. So the observations, it can help to inform what you do with your next ace free work session. So it might be, the snuffle mat that I had at this height, actually Bodhi was just arching his head up a little bit too much to get up and over it, or he was just stretching up a little bit. Okay, if I just adjust that an inch this way or an inch that way, that'll make it a little bit better. It might be that the foods that I had placed out, that's really interesting. I can see that of those three different textures, that soft thing, that brittle, crunchy thing, that more sinuous, chewy thing, that seemed to be his preference. That's interesting. I might do a little bit more of that. It might be that you have decided to put something down onto the floor so that you've got different textures to walk on. So obviously proprioception is incredibly important. That might give you information that said, oh, they avoided that texture. I wonder why. Or they walked across that. They that was no issue to them. So you can just observe them for anything and everything, and you don't need to have training to look at your dog and go, what do I see? And I think it's very helpful to pick one body part to watch the video through, or if you're not videoing it, just watch the session through. And it's quite hard to train your head to do it. Right, I'm just going to watch his tail for the next 10 minutes. I'm just going to watch his tail. And that can tell us so much. If Bodhi's got some ace free work that I've set up, he'll come in, he'll be quite animated to start off with, and his tail's quite upright. And then as he gets to certain stations, it will just start to relax down. He has a natural right hand kink to his tail, or he used to, and I'll talk more about that. Now, the more ace free work we do, the quicker it hangs straight down. It never used to hang straight down, never. So it might just be that you just watch the tail, because the tail does all sorts of things and we're like, oh yeah, the tail's amazing. But when you actually start to look, okay, when they're doing that, this happens to the tail. That's interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything to us that we go, oh yes, right. But it's interesting, and it's about patterns. You watch patterns. It was through our very first time that we went down to Tilly Farm, which is where Ace Free Work was born. And it was looking at Bodhi licking on a slightly angled station, so that as he went slightly forward to lick further up the lick mat, and as he licked slightly further back, so he came down a little bit, we just noticed this reoccurring pattern of the left rear stayed still and the right rear moved forward half a paw and then moved back half a paw, and forward half a paw and back. And that's just a moment in time. But over a number of sessions, we started to realize he's actually loading more through his left rear than his right rear. Okay, interesting. Does it mean anything? Does it not? That nothing happens by chance. Like that's something for him that's comfortable to do, because I'm not luring him to do things. I'm not doing a training game with him. I'm not just trying to walk him on a lead and get videos so that I can show a vet or something like that. Like I'd never seen this while taking him in on a walk. It's by getting him to slow down and just move in whatever feels best for him. And that started a journey where we ended up pushing to get x-rays at a vet, and we found out he had mild hip dysplasia in his right hip. Never would have known that without the observations through ace free work. So it can just be a joyous thing of just watching your dog TV. Like there's no better dog TV than watching your dog just feel amazing. So it might just be that, just for the fun. Like you don't have to start, but it's also incredible to go, okay, that's really interesting. I gave him these choices, this bit of agency, and I thought, oh, I know my dog, and I thought, oh, he'll go for that. Actually, he didn't. He went for that. and therefore you can build on it from session to session. So you can start really simple, make some really just watch them, just watch and just go, what catches my eye? Is his ear that's normally one sticking up and one flopping down a bit more? Do they start to send, do they start at any point during the ace free work? Do they even up a little bit? Also, which side of their mouth do they chew on? If you've got a circular station, do they always go clockwise or anti-clockwise, or do they go every which way? Like there's so many things that you can observe. It's a big hole to go into.
Oh my God, this is like the best rabbit hole ever. I love it. I love it. And you're touching on some things that I talk a lot about in my own work, and specifically relating it to my fetch framework. It's the targeted approaches and the curiosity that when you start to use a different lens and you start asking different questions, or you're taking a step back to engage with your dog in a different way, all sorts of things become apparent. And to your point, they can be really useful in going to a vet or a behaviorist or a canine massage therapist, or what have you, and say, I've just noticed this thing before it becomes a real problem, as an example. But then also just noticing like the beauty and the individuality of your dog and the joy of having a dog. But I wanted to pick up on something you were just mentioning about Bodhi's tail. What was it that was going on? Why do you feel he was holding it in a particular way? And then through ACE free work, he has gradually learned to relax it. And does that relaxed state occur in other areas of his life, or is it specifically when he's doing ACE free work?
Yeah, so I think the whole physical thing with Bodhi that I had no idea before I first did ace free work. I had no idea about this, and I went through that guilt of going, oh my God, my dog's in pain, and I had no idea. That was quite tough to go through, but it gave us wonderful information. So I think it's obviously everything is connected. So he has mild hip dysplasia in his right hip. The tail curves to the right. He's got slightly wonky ears. One carries more tension than the other. So, sticks up slightly more than the other. So it's that, everything is connected from the tip of the nose, through the tongue, through the spine, down to the tail. So the curving to the right, I think, is connected to the right hip, which then sort of offloads and then goes into the left ear. So I think there's more tension in the left ear. So I think it's about that physicality, what is going on in his body. Um, he's he's quite easily a very switched on, very hyper, very driven dog. So he's a collie lurcher. He's very collie brain. And we live in a busy part of outskirts of London. So for him, the environment is quite there's 200 sheep everywhere all the time. There's planes, there's people, there's noise, and so on. And certainly for the first few years, I thought it was more about training, doing more. Um, you know, uh, Fairly quickly I realized more walks a day wasn't helpful, thankfully. And I shared that on the first podcast, that partly I stopped walking him for the second walk in the day just because I was finding it so hard. But then I had this discovery of, gosh, he seems to be so much easier. So I think the tail tension, coming back to ace free work, in ace free work, it allows him to access a level of physical relaxation that he doesn't do at other times. It's a level of arousal, of down regulation, of his body just going, oh, and it literally hangs straight down. And I just never really seen that. And I can now see it on walks sometimes, but it's also become a really easy little observation for me. If he's got the little right hand crook, I know he's just a bit more animated. Doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just information that he is a bit more woohoo than like when he's like down and sniffing and more relaxed. So I think it's like that level of observation that can and it's so easy for us to just go, oh, it's just how it is. And it can just be how it is. Like it doesn't always mean something. It could just be your dog's tail curls to the right naturally. None of us are symmetrical. Like my eyebrows are completely not symmetrical. There's nothing I could do with them. But it can be really useful little bits of information at a simple level. Yeah, so ace free work gives him relaxation that I've not seen in any other way, and it has a really positive knock-on effect with his other behaviors, which are just very overexcitable, just
Mm.
very overexcitable. So yeah.
Have you noticed an impact on you as well in terms of how you are engaging? How has ACE free work opened you up in terms of not in terms of being a trainer, but in terms of being Bodhi's guardian? Has
Yeah.
that shifted things for you
Yes.
too?
Yeah, hugely. Because um probably like most humans, I don't know, is it most humans? I'm obsessed with things that are soft and furry. Just I've really had to learn to like stop touching dogs because that's all I want to do is just touch dogs. Um, as a kid, I had so many cuddly toys because I'm very touched. Like, oh God, that feels amazing. So I've learned that, Bodhi's quite hand shy. We didn't have to learn. That was very apparent very early on. So, it was not appropriate to touch him because he would literally just go, get off me. Like, I just don't want to be touched. Um, so it's really taught me to respect his ability to make choices about touch or not touch, and or the ways that I put on the harness, which he finds easier. So, he really struggles putting his head through things, or he really used to struggle. He's pretty good now. I'll probably hold out a treat and I'll get him to do it, but it's still not his favorite thing in the world. So now it might just be that I'll unclip the front part of the harness so that I can put it on like a collar and then just twist it round and then do the other bit. So it's helped to inform me about how I respect what he finds comfortable and not comfortable. Can he cope with my more clumsy approach early on? Yes. Does he need to? No. So it's what, what I can learn from it. So yeah, it's really taught me to be much more respectful of what he enjoys, as well as what needs to be done in order to just perform daily life. Like, you need to get a harness on you if we're going out into the car. um but also from a sort of a handling and a husbandry point of view, something like ACE free work can be a really wonderful way to help dogs to become more comfortable with the things that we need to do, but in a consent-based environment. So for instance, say we've got our triangular picture of our three stations, you could put another thing in there where it's a little bit of vet bed or a bed or something specific that you have in the picture for doing some handling.
Mm.
And it might be that you just sit on the floor beside it. And this is not about coercion. This is not about, come here, I have the food, let me touch your ear, let me look in your ear, or let me touch a paw. In time, I might want to trim your nails. You can just sit there, and at some point in that ACE free work setup, they might choose to come and sit with you. They might not. Um, but then you can build in sort of light body work, which is totally consent based because they're free to get up and move away, to go back to one of the stations, to explore, to sniff, to get food, to drink, to do whatever, or they may choose to come and sit with you. And I think when you give them that choice, they're so much more likely to opt in because they know they can get up and move away at any point, and you're not chasing them around trying to do the thing that you need to do. Um, so yeah, slight tangent there, but it just felt logical because it's such a powerful way of bringing in training, um, but in a way that is not, pressured training.
Right. Right. Now I know. I well, it's interesting because you had asked me when before we started recording about what I think has helped Lucky adjust to being in a new country, a completely new context. And I said to you, I think a lot of it is layered, but I think one of the things that has been really helpful that relates directly to what you're talking about with ACE free work is looking at how I could give him more choice points. And where was I actually trying to coerce him into things
Mm.
because I needed it that way? Or, like the nail trim, all that kind of stuff. Lucky, like Bodhi is very hand shy, and that has been a struggle, and it still is a bit of a struggle with us. But I consciously started to look at how could I work everything that I was doing from the standpoint of my own expectations of what things should look like. So whether that's the walk or that's how we're engaging, or even like the latest one where I've caught myself is he absolutely does not like to go out and poo when it is cold and rainy. He will just
Who
hold
would?
it. Who, and I get it, right? And I've actually on the walk, I've had out loud conversations with him about, Bubba, if you could use the bathroom, I would totally be okay with this. I said, but you have got to go. And the frustration that brings up in me and the fear it brings up in me, because of course my brain is then going to like, if he gets constipated, he's holding in toxins and I don't want him to get sick and like it quickly goes from just the annoyance of like, it would be nice if you just did your poo so we could go back home to, oh my God, what if he gets really sick from all this? I think a lot of us can relate to kind of that. But it was Georgina of Georgina's Kitchen who mentioned to me when I was talking to her about this sort of recognition that our adult dogs are adults of their own species, that and to recognize they have an intelligence about their own bodies. And yes, we are forcing them into our world. So there is an element of needing to, like you're saying, you need to put the harness on to get into the car. Like there are things that we have to do. But given the fact that they're so captive and they have so little choice over things in their lives, could I maybe relax a little bit and understand that maybe he really does not want to go poo. And me forcing this issue and dragging him around the block again and again and again is not doing anything to help the ultimate aim of creating more avenues of choice for him, creating a healthy situation for him. And even like I started to feel like I was creating a negative association for him on going for the walks because he was like, lady, I do not want to do this. Like, nothing you do is going to make me want to go and poo in this horrific weather. And it was just this kind of recalibration for me around expectations that we have of our dogs. And even those small sorts of things, how they add up to either a positive or a negative experience for our dogs. But it's really on us shifting where we're coming from when we're asking them to do certain things. And so I love that Ace Free Work is completely focused on them just being dogs.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I would say that another sort of adjunct to that in terms of ACE free work and toileting is working. I work very closely with Sarah Jones from My Anxious Dog, who does the yellow space awareness products. And she's at a lot of the dog shows. We're raising awareness for dogs that need space and her range of yellow products and so on. And a couple of years ago, she created yellow space zones, which it's built on the foundations of ACE free work as much as we can do in the middle of a field in a dog show. So I come along and I'm there, setting up the sessions for the dogs. The dogs come in one at a time. Some dogs at dog shows are a bit stressed, probably shouldn't be there, but they are there. Their caregivers are doing their best with the knowledge that they have. And some dogs can just get a little bit overwhelmed. So what it does is it gives them sort of a 10-15 minute reset in a quiet space with some opportunities for exploration. And it's amazing how often that after 10-15 minutes in there, their caregiver says, oh, they haven't had a drink. They've just had a drink. Or, oh, they've not had a pee. Or they've not had a poo. And they've probably done 2 out of 3 of those things within that 15-minute window in that ACE free work setup. So, the dog is obviously stressed in that environment, doesn't feel safe enough to take a poo or to have a drink. But after 10-15 minutes of their body just being able to go, actually their body was able to say, I do need to go. Let's go. Let's do it here. And it's just a joyous thing because it happens time after time after time. So having said that, I was thinking about yesterday, we decided to do a little hybrid for Bodhi, short 20-minute walk, because Bodhi really does like to toilet on a walk. He will go in the garden if he has to, but he'll hold it for 2-3 hours. Whereas, if we were out walking at 7 a.m., he would probably go within 2 minutes of being out of the house. So we did a 20-minute walk so that he could toilet on the walk, and then we set up a 20-minute ACE free work session. But it's interesting. it's really interesting to see how it affects some dogs' emotional state in order to be able to do what they need to do, either in that positive way or not. So it's a fascinating topic. We can talk poo all day, can't we, Anna?
Oh God, I love talking poo. Are you kidding me? It's a canine nutritionist's dream. I love this stuff. But I think too, it's such a reflection. I talk a lot about the way that our dogs are mirroring things for us. And I had struggled with like chronic IBS for years. And so the gut issue and the relationship to emotions and stress and all that is very present for me. And it was like it went out the window for me that time where I was like, dude, you just gotta go right now. Please, please just go. And it's like it was such an invitation for me to kind of catch myself and the expectations and remind myself of not only does he have an intelligence around his body that I'm ignoring right now, but also he's reflecting back to me where I've ignored the intelligence of my own body to
Mm.
fit in with what, you know what I mean? There's that
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of conversation that it brings up for us too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you as well, what are some things that people could do as we celebrate National Don't Walk Your Dog Day? What are some things that people can practically do that would perhaps involve some ACE-free work or some other types of activities and just to clarify too, you're not saying don't ever take your dog on a walk, but
100%. Yeah.
but what are some things that people can do as either something to replace a walk or as a complement for a kind of walk?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's so many reasons to have other things to do, whether it is physical restrictions on the dog. Bodhi had surgery a while back. We had 10 days of, 5-10 minute on lead walks only. It was no problem because we just did some ACE-free work at home, and he really was quite happy with that. So obviously ACE-free work, I would say, is top of the list of wonderful things to do instead of a walk, or as well as or alternative. There's lots of activities that you can do, whether it's your own training at home, trick training, scent work, classes that are organized. Scent classes can be wonderful. It might be that agility is your thing, or hoopers if you want a sort of more entry level thing. Man trailing can be wonderful. So if anybody's struggling with a reactive dog, have a look at man trailing. If you have a man trailing organization or instructor near you that can cope with, is set up well to support reactive dogs that even they are trailing a person, the scent of a person. Even if your dog struggles with strangers, it can be set up in a way that absolutely works, so the dog can still be using their incredible sense of smell and get huge joy from trailing the scent of a stranger. And then when they find them, the reward is given away from the stranger, so it can build up some hugely positive associations for things that they struggle with. So man trailing is wonderful. um Even trips out, it could be that you've got bodies of water near you, whether your dog is a swimmer, a paddler, or not. Just the variation of the environment is huge. And as you say, stop walking your dog is not about not taking them out, because the exposure to nature, whatever that nature is a huge part of their welfare. um if there's lots of private fields that you can hire now. They are everywhere pretty much. But if you don't have access to that, or you don't have the funds to that, I say, have you got some friends, family, neighbors that have a garden, either with or without a dog, that you could say, could I just come round for half an hour? Can we just come around and do some sniffing? Just the fact that it will have different wildlife in there. It will smell different. Like, that can be hugely enriching. Um, Free shaping is a wonderful thing to do. There's these movement puzzle games that, the list of things that you can do instead of and or complementary to walks is huge. And I think the big thing is that if your dog is used to doing different things for different reasons, when you have to not do the walk for whatever reason, appalling weather, injury to us, injury to them, aging dogs that can't go as far, but they still really have lots of needs to be stimulated. If they are used to doing different things, you can always teach them something new at any point in their life. But if they're already used to doing different things, like Bodhi was, actually the 10 days post surgery was a relative breeze. Like, I was really pleasantly surprised because Bodhi's an active dog. Like, we worked hard on teaching him that there are calmer things to do in life. But the thought of him, not going out of the house for proper walks and getting some off lead time, a few years ago, that would have really freaked me out. But because he's used to doing other things instead, it's much easier. But if you've never done anything else and you're faced with the situation of we can't walk our dog for whatever reason, what a great time to learn something new together. So just get some help, I would say, if you need to ease them into something in the right way.
I love it. I have plans. I told you last time that one of Lucky's favorite things to do is he steals socks. And so he has his own collection of socks, which came with him. And he takes so much pleasure out of me hiding different things in socks and then hiding the socks in different places. And that's what I did. I do it every year to kind of celebrate this, even more so. And I'll be doing that. But one of the things I was looking at doing this year is incorporating a little bit more self-selection, which I think ties in with Ace Free work too, of just trying some different things for him, like different types of treats, for example, or even different herbs for him to sniff out, different textures. I love that you've mentioned that. I'm gonna try that with him as well because he's quite texture sensitive too. So
Mm.
that could be both interesting and fun for him. But it reminds me about just really getting back into why we brought dogs into our lives in the first place, just the joy of them being dogs,
Mm.
not making them into something that we necessarily have a vision of them being, but just getting curious about this little being in front of us and what do they enjoy and what do they not enjoy. So I think it's a beautiful opportunity to kind of prioritize doing that with our dogs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and with the socks, what I was thinking of an Ace Free workstation that is, some little gardening truck that has got lots of socks in there, so that he can rummage and you can see which sock is the sock of the day.
I love it. I love it. And, I'm a big fan of and a big proponent of species appropriate feeding. And one of those things is if you can do it, giving your dogs raw meaty bones as a carnivore and watching the satisfaction that they get out of doing that and also how that's supporting their muscular system, their nervous system, everything. There's such beauty with that. And watching how dogs work with their food, where they will often drag it off to somewhere and they circle around it, like you were saying. And I noticed Lucky does the same thing with his socks. So I love to see like where, if I were to have them in a kind of tub, where he takes them to and then
Mm,
how he's engaging with it and moving around it. Like it's just fascinating. And then adding that lens that you've shared today of observing with another level of curiosity, like is there a particular direction? Is there a particular texture of sock that he prefers or all of that kind of stuff. It just becomes just so interesting, but also a really deep way of connecting with your dog. I
mm.
love that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Nikki, is there anything else that you would like to make sure that we leave listeners with today that we might have not touched upon or you'd like to go into a little bit more detail on?
I think one of the things that's really caught my eye with fascination recently, and I was lucky enough to do my module 5 with Sarah Fisher just before Christmas, and she shared with us this study which talks about the tongue. Now, it's a human study, but it was done in 2018 and it was about, and what was it described as? I'm gonna have to look this up. So it was the anatomical relationships of the tongue with the body system by Bordoni et al. And it talks about, we talk about everything being connected, but it can be quite a glib thing to talk about. So this study kind of went into this on humans, and there's lots of parallels that we can draw out of it for dogs. Um, the tongue is connected to posture, to breathing, to emotion, to balance, to neck muscles, and gut function. That just makes my head go, what? surely this tongue is just doing stuff like getting food in there and like licking your lips and stuff like that. And we know there's obviously, we know with dogs, that it's a real clear signal of their emotional state of the lip licking, and that there's the research was showing about the forward tongue position in humans as being elevated stress levels. So all of that lip licking in dogs is that all fits in with that. The tongue has got really deep connections with the amygdala. So the pain processing areas of the brain, they're processing the emotions, and it's especially linked into the fear and threat detection. So the power of chewing for me, I've always known with Bodhi, it was a big, no, I've not always known. I've learnt through ACE free work just how important. I knew he loved to chew, but I didn't realize just how important it was. And now, over the last few years, I've started to understand a little chink into why. So basically, all of these incredible tongue movements can affect the whole body posture and stability, like just by giving your dog a chew. Like that's insane. So the tongue doesn't just help chewing; like it's an essential part of the whole body system and their stress perception and their stress management. And I think it's really easy for us to do a brilliant job and give our dog a nice chew. My preference is, as you say, meaty bones, size appropriate for the dog, but also the single source protein. So now you can get hundreds of animal, fish, body parts, and not all chews are equal. So thinking about it, and I was lucky enough to be down at Tilly Farm last Monday and Tuesday and seeing 4 different dogs, and obviously their caregivers have brought the kind of chews and the kind of crunches that their dogs love, and the variation in how and what the dog's preferences were was just incredible. So one lady had this lovely bully dog, and he loved more than anything the really brittle crunch. So this was like a dried cod skin or something like that. And the happiness on his face as he was just going, like, fish skin crumbs going everywhere, but that real brittle crunch as it's just kind of exploding into crumbs that's going everywhere. So, for a smaller dog, that might be the equivalent, might be a dried sprat or something like that. And then you've got the kind of the gnawing kind of chews, like a pizzle or a muscle or a tendon or something like that, where they're kind of like really getting through something that's a bit harder work for them. They're really gnawing on something like a raw bone, and then something that they're sort of stripping fibers off them and things like that. So there's so many different ways of giving our dogs incredible tongue experiences just with a variety of chews, and I found that it was a really important way of helping Bodhi to relax. So we now have in his daily diet 2 or 3 chewing opportunities um, per day with just less calories in his raw or his lightly cooked food. It's just part of his daily calories, and for him it's a massive de-stressor. So after a walk he can come back quite wired. Really, he's enjoyed it, and he's ready for a sleep, but he will struggle to settle down in sleep. His brain is too wired, his body is too warm. But by giving him one of his chews, if he was in the office behind me, I'd have given him a chew and he'd have been quietly crunching it for 10 minutes or so. And then he would have pegged out and been asleep. And of course, then the body is able to learn and lay down really good memories and associations for what has gone on before. So it can, giving dogs a chew and a sleep after doing anything with them that has been productive stuff that you really want to help them learn, or perhaps it was challenging, you want to help them de-stress. Like you can use, oh, ow, just bash my elbow. You can use just a simple chew in so many different ways. And there's every protein for every kind of dog situation and every size. And giving your dog whatever kind of chew you give them, you're doing a great job. Like I'm not having a go if you haven't got a box of 50 different body parts in your cupboard like I have. Like, that's fine. But maybe get 3 or 4 different things, and put them out in ACE free work. So in ACE free work, I would always have chews available, different textures of food, soft food, crunchy food, licking things, but I would always have a number of chews of that different range of chews. And I used to play a little game in my head of, oh yeah, I think he'll go for the stinky tripe stick. Oh no, he didn't this time. Yep. Like he never goes for what I think he's going to go for. But that's just that little bit of agency in his day. How do I know what he needs at that point in time? If I have a lovely box of chocolates, I don't want my fiance Ash to pick one out for me. He's not going to pick.
Exactly.
He's not going to pick the one that I want right now. Like, I don't know. It's just, it sounds really simple, but just, yeah, crunching, chewing. It's a big thing, and I think so many of our dogs could benefit from it. Just factoring in the calories and what's appropriate, and just making them natural. Yeah, that I think is a gift for most dogs, and just the joy of watching a dog chew when their eyes soften. It's almost like they're falling asleep while chewing. I think it's just one of the most joyous things you can see.
There's nothing like it. I have to say, Lucky's favorite chew, and it's so fun. I love giving it to him and watching him do this, where he'll take like a pork spaghetti, like so it's like the
Yeah,
intestine kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But he takes it between his little paws, and then he lays down, and he's just like like
But it's also a big workout. I know exactly what you mean. Like I always think like Bodhi has pretty much got thumbs when he's
yeah.
got something he really wants to hold on to and manipulate in a certain way. Um, but yeah, what a joyous thing is
It's
that?
so good. And I love that point that you made about giving different types of textures and how they use it because I've noticed too for Lucky, he doesn't I give him rabbit ears. And he's not a massive fan of actually eating them, but he loves to shred them apart.
Mm.
So there's like bits of rat. I mean, you just have to be prepared for this, right? There's going to be bits of rabbit ear everywhere. But that's such a pleasure for him to kind of that ripping, tearing, shredding thing that dogs get to do. And it's another thing that we can add to their kind of regimen of activities, of even things like shredding paper, shredding boxes, shredding loo rolls. We forget that that's such an important instinctive activity for them to do, and it's one of those things that we don't often give them a lot of opportunities to do. And if they are doing it, like destroying plush toys or something like that, we get upset with them for doing that. So giving them appropriate things for them to kind of release that is huge.
Yeah,
It's huge.
100%. Yeah.
I also, that tongue thing is super interesting, but it kind of makes sense with some of the things that I'm seeing pop up as well in terms of women's wellness and somatic work, that there is a direct link to the way that we hold tension, particularly say around our hips. Like a lot of women carry tension around there, that when you are moving and I'm not even going to even try to speak on what the specifics are with how you do this. I just know that moving your tongue around your mouth in particular ways is designed to help release tension around our hip area,
Yeah.
which is just like, that is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Mind blowing,
Just,
isn't it?
I love it. Love it. Nikki, I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
Thank you so, so much. Can we remind listeners of where they can find out information about your book, where they can find out information about National Don't Walk Your Dog Day, all of that good stuff? Where can they get in touch with you?
Yep. So the book is available on Amazon. So just search for Stop Walking Your Dog and you will find me. It's just heading on to about 7,000 copies, which just blows my mind. Like,
Amazing.
and I'm writing the follow-up as we speak. It's been 2 years in the making and it's getting close. It will be out, sneak preview. It will be out in September.
Well,
If I
you're gonna
keep
have to come
everything on track. So
back.
I'm very excited about that. My website is probably a good starting point to go to all things. So that's just puptalk.co.uk. On there, you'll find the awareness day on the menu of free resources. You can also find that ACE free work guide, how to get started with ACE free work without buying a thing, and links to social media. But pretty much across the board, I'm at Pup Talk 101. So do please connect with me, and it's only me, so if you send me a message you'll get a reply from me. So yeah.
I love it. Nikki, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we'll have to have you back in September when your book is out.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I'm there, I'm in.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for my conversation with Niki French. What was your biggest takeaway? I would love to hear it. Leave a comment or reach out to me on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama and let me know. And if you know someone who's been feeling the pressure of doing everything right with their dog, this might be the episode they didn't know they needed. I would also love to hear what alternatives to walking you end up doing with your dog on National Don't Walk Your Dog Day this April 2nd. For more information on National Don't Walk Your Dog Day, Niki's book, and her other offerings, please visit her website puptalk.co.uk. I've left this link in the show notes. And if this conversation has sparked your curiosity and you'd like to explore these ideas more deeply, from fresh food and energetics to targeted care and holistic well-being, I would love to invite you to join my free Facebook group, First Light. It's a beautiful community of dog guardians learning how to nourish their dogs in a more conscious, connected way. Just search Fetch First Light on Facebook or click the link that I've left for you in the show notes. Okay, until next time.